Commander Sarah Chen had always known her assignment to the Outer Rim colonies would be dangerous. What she hadn't expected was to become a surrogate mother to 3 dragon cubs on a planet that wasn't supposed to have any intelligent life. The Dracorian Empire had been humanity's enemy for over 50 years. Their massive, scaled warriors breathed plasma and could tear through starship hulls with their bare claws. When the war finally ended in an uneasy peace, both sides established neutral zones where neither could claim territory. Kepler 442b was supposed to be one of those dead zones. Sarah's research vessel, the Times Prometheus Asterisk, had crashed during a routine survey mission 6 months ago. She was the only survivor, and her distress beacon had been damaged beyond repair. With limited supplies and no way to contact the outside galaxy, she had expected to die alone on the barren world. That was before she found the cave. The 3 dragon eggs had been abandoned in a cavern deep underground. Their shells were cracked, leaking a strange blue fluid that seemed to pulse with its own light. Sarah's xenobiology training told her these were Dracorian young, left to die by parents who had fled when the planet was declared neutral. Her human instincts told her something else entirely. She couldn't just watch them die. Using her survival gear, Sarah had carefully extracted the cubs from their failing eggs. They were small then, no bigger than house cats, with scales that shifted between silver and deep purple. Their eyes hadn't even opened yet. She fed them synthesized nutrients from her emergency rations and kept them warm against the planet's harsh nights. The cubs grew quickly. Within weeks, they were the size of wolves, their scales hardening into natural armor. They followed Sarah everywhere, chirping in frequencies that made her bones vibrate. She named them after old Earth constellations: Orion, Cassiopeia, and the smallest one, Draco. Draco had always been different. While his siblings were content to hunt the local wildlife and explore their underground home, Draco stayed close to Sarah. He would curl up beside her sleeping bag at night, his warm scales providing comfort against the cold. When Sarah spoke, Draco would tilt his massive head and listen with an intelligence that seemed far beyond his months of age. It was Draco who first spoke. "Sarah, mother," he had said one evening, his voice a low rumble that made the cave walls shake. "Why do you save us when your kind and our kind are enemies?" The question had stunned her into silence. These weren't just animals she had rescued. They were people, children, in their own way, with their own thoughts and feelings. The realization changed everything. Over the following months, Sarah taught the cubs about human culture, about kindness and compassion, about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. In return, they taught her about Dracorian history, about honor and loyalty that ran deeper than species lines. They learned together, 3 young dragons and 1 stranded human, creating their own small family in the depths of an abandoned world. The Dracorian patrol ship found them on a Tuesday. Sarah had been gathering water from an underground spring when the ground above their cave began to shake. She rushed back to find Orion and Cassiopeia huddled in the far corner, their scales shifted to deep black in fear. Draco stood protectively in front of them, his smaller frame trembling but determined. "Sarah, mother," he whispered, "the Sky Hunters have come." The invasion was swift and brutal. Dracorian soldiers, their scales scarred from countless battles, descended through the cave, opening on anti-grav platforms. They wore the crimson armor of the Imperial Guard, elite units known for their ruthlessness. Sarah stepped in front of the cubs, her arms spread wide. "They're just children," she said in her broken Dracorian. "They've done nothing wrong." The lead soldier, a massive creature with silver eyes and plasma burns across his jaw, looked down at her with disgust. "Human filth," he snarled. "You dare pollute our young with your weakness?" "General Vorthak," one of the younger soldiers said, "the cubs appear unharmed. We could simply—" "Silence." Vorthak's roar echoed through the cave. "These younglings have been contaminated by human influence. They must be cleansed. And this creature must be punished for her crimes against our species." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "What crimes?" "I saved their lives. Their eggs were dying when I found them. You stole them from the embrace of honorable death," Vorthak spat. "Better to die as true Dracorians than live as human corrupted abominations." The soldiers moved with military precision. Sarah found herself pinned between two guards while energy restraints bound her wrists. The cubs were herded into a corner, Draco still standing protectively in front of his siblings despite being a fraction of the soldiers' size. "You will watch," Vorthak announced, "as we correct your mistakes." They set up what Sarah recognized as a public punishment device in the center of the cave. The neural lash was a weapon designed to cause maximum pain without permanent physical damage. It was often used by Dracorian military to discipline soldiers who had dishonored their units. "This human corrupted our young," Vorthak declared, though his audience was only the 3 cubs and his own soldiers. "She must answer for this crime before we can begin their proper education." Sarah was strapped to the punishment frame, her shirt removed to expose her back. The neural lash hummed with deadly energy, its crystalline tip crackling with contained lightning. "Do not look away, younglings," Vorthak commanded the cubs. "See what becomes of those who would corrupt Dracorian honor." The first strike felt like liquid fire poured directly onto her nervous system. Sarah bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, determined not to scream. The cubs needed to see her stay strong. The second strike broke her silence. She cried out, her back arching against the restraints. Through the haze of pain, she could hear Orion and Cassiopeia whimpering in distress. "Stop," a small voice said. Vorthak paused, the lash still crackling. "What did you say, youngling?" Draco stepped forward, his scales now a deep, angry red that Sarah had never seen before. Though he was the smallest of the 3 cubs, something in his posture made him seem much larger. "I said stop," Draco repeated, his voice carrying harmonics that made the cave itself seem to listen. "You will not hurt Sarah, mother," the general laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "The corruption runs even deeper than I thought. This creature is not your mother, youngling. She is an enemy of our people." "Sarah, mother saved us," Draco said, taking another step forward. "Sarah, mother fed us when we were hungry. Sarah, mother kept us warm when we were cold. Sarah, mother taught us about honor and loyalty and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. If that is corruption, then perhaps it is your understanding that is flawed." Vorthak raised the neural lash again, his silver eyes blazing with fury. "You dare question a general of the Imperial Guard? You will learn respect, youngling, after I finish with your human pet." The third strike was the worst yet. Sarah's vision went white with pain, and she felt consciousness starting to slip away. Through the agony, she heard Draco's voice, but it was different now. Deeper, more resonant, ancient in a way that made her bones ache. "You have made a mistake, General Vorthak," Draco said, and Sarah could hear something in his tone that sent chills down her already burning spine. "You should have asked who we are before you began this punishment." "You are orphaned cubs," Vorthak snarled. "Nothing more." "No," Draco said quietly. "We are the children of Empress Zilthari the Eternal. Our mother rules the Dracorian Empire, and our father was Crown Prince Malthorn of the Golden Reach. We are not orphans, General. We are the missing heirs that your empire has been searching for since the Battle of Crimson Nebula." The cave fell absolutely silent, except for the crackling of the neural lash. Sarah, through her pain-hazed vision, saw Vorthak's face go pale beneath his scales. "Impossible," he whispered. Orion and Cassiopeia stepped up beside their smaller brother, their own scales shifting to the same angry red. Now that Sarah looked at them properly, she could see the resemblance to the imperial family she had studied during her military training. The bone structure around their eyes, the particular pattern of their scales, the way they held themselves despite their youth. 3 dragon eggs were reported lost when the Imperial flagship was destroyed, Cassiopeia said, her voice carrying the same harmonics as her brother. 3 eggs, containing the next generation of the Imperial bloodline. The Empress declared 7 days of mourning across the Empire, Orion added. She has promised to tear apart any who harmed her children, piece by piece, across 7 star systems. Draco took another step toward the now trembling general. Despite his small size, he seemed to fill the cave with his presence. Our mother is very protective of family, General Vorthak. She is also very creative when it comes to punishment. Would you like to know what she does to those who torture children in front of her grandchildren? Sarah felt the restraints around her wrists loosen as the soldiers, now understanding the magnitude of their error, began to back away from the punishment device. But first, Draco continued, his young voice carrying the weight of imperial authority, you should know that Sarah Mother is also family now. She saved our lives. She raised us. She taught us about honor when our own people had abandoned us to die. The smallest dragon cub looked directly at General Vorthok, with eyes that blazed with inner fire. Name your family, General, Draco said quietly. Name them now, because when our mother learns what you have done to her daughter-in-law, they will be next. The neural lash fell from Vorthok's nerveless fingers and clattered to the stone floor. In the sudden silence that followed, Sarah finally understood that her quiet life of survival, on this forgotten world, was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The dragon cubs she had saved were royalty. And now, through their gratitude and love, she had just become part of the most powerful family in the galaxy. General Vorthok was the first to realize that he had just committed an act of war against the Empress of the Dracorian Empire herself. General Vorthok's transformation was immediate and terrible. The color drained from his battle-scarred scales as the full weight of his actions crashed down upon him. He had just tortured a member of the imperial family in front of the missing heirs to the throne. In Dracorian law, this was not merely treason, it was an offense that would condemn not just him, but every blood relative he possessed to death by plasma incineration. Your Highnesses, he stammered, dropping to one knee. We had no knowledge. The records indicated. The records, Draco interrupted, his young voice carrying an authority that made the veteran soldiers behind Vorthok shuffle nervously, indicated that 3 imperial heirs were lost in the destruction of the flagship Times, Sovereign's Pride *. They did not indicate that we had died. Yet you chose to assume we were merely orphaned cubs, rather than sending proper identification protocols. Sarah, still strapped to the punishment frame, watched in amazement as her 3 adoptive children transformed before her eyes. The playful cubs who had cuddled with her during cold nights and learned human lullabies were revealing themselves as something far more significant. She could see it now, the regal bearing that had always seemed natural to them, the way they had instinctively organized themselves into a hierarchy even as children, the intelligence that had allowed them to master both human and Dracorian customs with equal ease. Furthermore, Cassiopeia added, her scales shifting to the deep purple that Sarah now realized indicated imperial displeasure. Your assumption that we were corrupted by human influence shows a fundamental ignorance of imperial policy. The Empress herself has stated that the ceasefire with humanity opens opportunities for cultural exchange and mutual understanding. Orion, the largest of the 3, stepped forward with movements that were unmistakably military despite his youth. General Vorthok, you will immediately release our adoptive mother and provide her with medical attention for the injuries you have inflicted. You will then explain to us exactly how you plan to rectify this situation. The general's soldiers looked between their commanding officer and the 3 young dragons with growing unease. Sarah could see the calculations running behind their eyes, loyalty to their general weighed against the very real possibility of facing the Empress's wrath if they continued to follow his orders. Medical attention? Vorthok repeated weakly. Sarah Chen is now a member of the imperial bloodline through adoption rights, Draco explained with patient precision. In saving our lives and raising us when our own people had abandoned us, she has earned the protection of the throne. Any harm that comes to her will be considered a direct attack on the imperial family. Sarah felt the restraints around her wrists finally release completely. One of Vorthok's soldiers, a younger Dracorian whose scales still showed the bright coloring of relative youth, hurried forward with a medical kit. Your Highness, the young soldier said nervously, addressing Draco while carefully examining the neural lash burns across Sarah's back. The injuries are severe, but not life-threatening. The neural pathways will heal within days if properly treated. See that they are, Orion commanded. And soldier, what is your name? Lieutenant Thixar, Your Highness. Lieutenant Thixar, you show proper respect and protocol. This will be remembered. The implicit threat to the other soldiers who had participated in Sarah's torture hung in the air like smoke. Sarah tried to sit up, wincing as the movement sent fresh waves of pain through her nervous system. "Draco, I'm fine. You don't need to. Sarah, mother," all three cubs said simultaneously, their voices harmonizing in a way that made the cave walls resonate. It was apparently a formal address, because even General Vorthak straightened with surprise. "You saved our lives," Draco continued alone. "You raised us with love and patience when you could have left us to die. You taught us that strength means protecting others, not dominating them. These are the qualities that make good rulers. And they are lessons we could not have learned in any Imperial Academy." Cassiopeia moved to Sarah's side, carefully positioning herself so that Sarah could lean against her warm scales for support. "In our culture, adoption binds families more strongly than blood. You are our mother now, in every way that matters, and anyone who hurts our mother will learn why the Empress is feared across 17 star systems." General Vorthak cleared his throat carefully. "Your Highnesses, if I may, the situation is complex. My orders were to investigate reports of human activity in the neutral zone. We had no indication that members of the Imperial family were present. Perhaps we can find a way to resolve this misunderstanding without involving the Empress directly." The three cubs exchanged looks that were far too knowing for their apparent age. Sarah realized that despite their youth, they had inherited more than just royal blood. They had the political instincts of their species' greatest leaders. "You wish to cover up your mistake," Orion observed. "You fear the consequences of your actions," Cassiopeia added. "You hope we are too young to understand the full extent of what you have done," Draco finished. Vorthak's scales flushed dark green embarrassment, Sarah recalled from her cultural studies. "Your Highnesses are perceptive. We are Imperial heirs," Draco said simply. "Politics is in our blood. But more than that, we have learned human concepts of justice from our adoptive mother. She taught us that actions have consequences, and that those in power must be held accountable for their choices." Sarah watched the exchange with growing amazement. Her cubs, her children, she realized with a sudden surge of fierce protectiveness, were navigating this complex situation with skills that would have impressed seasoned diplomats. They were protecting her while simultaneously asserting their authority and managing the political implications of the general's mistake. "However," Draco continued, "we also learned about mercy and second chances. General Vorthak, you made a grievous error, but it was based on incomplete information and poor assumptions rather than deliberate malice." Hope flickered in the general's silver eyes. "Therefore," Cassiopeia took over, "we will offer you a choice. You may contact the Empress immediately and confess your actions, accepting whatever punishment she deems appropriate. Or, Vorthak asked quietly. "Or you may help us return home," Orion said. "You will provide transportation, medical care for our mother, and a full escort befitting our status. In exchange, we will speak to the Empress on your behalf, explaining that your actions, while inexcusable, were the result of incomplete intelligence rather than deliberate disrespect." Sarah could see Vorthak weighing his options. Confessing immediately would almost certainly mean death, but slowly and creatively. Taking the cub's offer meant trusting their word and hoping their influence with their mother would be enough to save his life. "The Empress has been searching for you for 6 months, he said finally. "She has mobilized half the Imperial fleet. There are rumors that she has been difficult to work with during this period. Our mother loves us very much," Draco agreed. "She will be overjoyed to see us again. That joy might make her more inclined toward mercy for those who helped reunite us. But if we tell her that you tortured our adoptive mother," Cassiopeia let the sentence hang, "she will demonstrate why she has ruled the Empire for 3 centuries, Orion finished. Lieutenant Thixar stepped forward nervously. "General, if I may suggest, the Imperial transport times, retribution times is only 6 hours away. We could have their Highnesses and their mother aboard by evening." Sarah tried to stand, accepting Cassiopeia's offered wing for support. "Wait," she said. "I appreciate what you're all trying to do, but I can't just leave. This planet was my assignment. I have responsibilities. Sarah, mother. Draco interrupted gently. Your assignment was to survey a supposedly uninhabited world for 6 months. You have been here for 6 months. Your mission is complete. 1. Besides, Orion added, you are now a member of the Imperial family. You have new responsibilities, such as? Sarah asked. Though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. Helping us rule an empire, Cassiopeia said matter-of-factly. You taught us about compassion and justice. These are qualities our people need to learn if we are to build a lasting peace with humanity and the other species. General Vorthak looked between the 3 young dragons and their human mother, with something approaching awe. Your Highnesses, he said carefully. Are you suggesting that a human could serve in an advisory capacity to the imperial throne? Over myself, human-self? We are suggesting, Draco replied, that our mother has already been serving in that capacity for 6 months. She has prepared us for leadership in ways that no Dracorian tutor could have managed. Sarah felt the weight of enormous changes settling around her like a heavy cloak. 6 months ago, she had been a xenobiologist on a routine survey mission. Now she was apparently the adoptive mother of 3 dragon princes and princesses, with all the political implications that entailed. The transport will arrive soon, Lieutenant Thixar reported, checking his communication device. General, we should prepare for departure. Vorthak nodded slowly. Very well. We will escort their Highnesses and their mother to the Imperial homeworld. I will trust in their mercy and wisdom. As the soldiers began to break down their equipment and prepare for the journey ahead, Sarah found herself looking around the cave that had been her home for months. The sleeping area she had created, the food preparation space, the corner where she had told the cubs stories about Earth and humanity, all of it would be left behind. Sarah, mother, Draco said softly, following her gaze. Are you sad to leave? Sarah considered the question seriously. I'm nervous about what comes next, she admitted. This has been my home. But home isn't really a place, is it? Home is family. The 3 cubs moved closer, surrounding her with their warmth and presence. Then you will never be homeless again, Cassiopeia said firmly. Because wherever we go, Orion added, we go together. So, and wherever we are, Draco concluded, that is where the Imperial family resides. As the antigrav platforms descended once again through the cave opening, this time to carry them to safety rather than capture, Sarah realized that her real adventure was just beginning. She had saved 3 dragon cubs and gained 3 children. Now she was about to meet their mother, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The Empress who had been searching desperately for her lost children for 6 months. The Empress who was about to discover that a human had not only saved them, but had become family. General Vorthak was right to be nervous. But as Sarah looked at her 3 adoptive children, proud, intelligent, compassionate young dragons who had learned to balance imperial authority with human kindness, she realized that perhaps this meeting might go better than anyone expected. The imperial heirs had learned about mercy from their human mother. Now it was time to see whether the Empress herself could learn the same lesson. The imperial palace on Dracoris Prime was a monument to power that could be seen from orbit. Crystalline spires reached toward the stars, each one carved from a single piece of volcanic glass that had taken centuries to cool. As their transport approached the landing bay, Sarah pressed her face to the viewport and tried to comprehend the sheer scale of what she was seeing. It's beautiful, she whispered. Wait until you see the throne room, Orion said, though his voice carried a note of nervousness that hadn't been there during their confrontation with General Vorthak. Mother has been redecorating since we disappeared. Redecorating? Sarah asked. She melted 3 courtiers who suggested that we might be dead, Cassiopeia explained matter-of-factly. Father says she's been impossible to live with. Apparently, she's turned the entire Imperial military upside down searching for us. Draco moved closer to Sarah, seeking comfort in the way he had as a much smaller cub. Sarah, mother. What if she doesn't understand? What if she thinks humans are still enemies? Sarah reached out to stroke the ridge above his eyes, a gesture that never failed to calm him. Then we'll show her that humans and Dracorians can be family. You three are living proof of that. The landing bay was filled with Imperial guards in full ceremonial armor, their scales polished to mirror brightness. As the transport's doors opened, a formation of dragons in the deep purple of the royal house stepped forward. Sarah recognized the formal reception from her diplomatic training. This was how the Empire welcomed home its most important citizens. General Vorthak emerged first, his shoulders set with resignation. He had spent the 6-hour journey composing what he clearly expected to be his final report. Behind him, the three cubs stepped into the light of their homeworld for the first time in months, their scales automatically shifting to the formal silver that indicated their royal status. And behind them, feeling completely out of place in her patched survival gear, came Sarah Chen. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every guard in the landing bay dropped to one knee, in perfect unison. The sound of their armored forms hitting the crystal floor echoed like thunder through the enclosed space. "Your Highnesses," the guard captain said, his voice carefully controlled. "The Empress has been informed of your arrival. She waits in the Throne of Echoes." Sarah had read about the Throne of Echoes during her pre-war intelligence briefings. It was the oldest seat of power in the Dracorian Empire, carved from the heart of a meteor, and said to amplify the voice of whoever sat upon it until it could be heard across star systems. It was where the Empress held court when making decisions that would affect the entire galaxy. It was not, Sarah suspected, a casual family reunion space. The walk through the palace corridors gave Sarah time to observe the artwork that covered every surface. Murals depicted the great victories of Dracorian history, the conquest of worlds, the subjugation of species that had dared to challenge the Empire's might. She noticed, however, that the most recent additions to the artwork showed different themes: cooperation, trade negotiations, peaceful first contacts with new species. The peace treaty with humanity changed many things, Orion explained, following her gaze. Mother has been working to transform the Empire from a conquest state to a diplomatic power. It has been challenging. Many of our people still believe that strength can only come from domination, Cassiopeia added. They don't understand that true strength comes from making allies instead of enemies. You sound like your mother taught you that lesson, Sarah said with a small smile. She didn't, Draco replied quietly. You did. The doors to the throne room were 30 feet tall and carved with the genealogy of the imperial line stretching back 2 millennia. As they opened, Sarah found herself facing the most intimidating sight she had ever witnessed. Empress Zilthari, the Eternal, sat upon the Throne of Echoes like a living embodiment of draconic power. She was massive, even by Dracorian standards, her scales shifting between gold and deep crimson in patterns that spoke of barely contained emotion. Her wings, folded behind the throne, stretched wide enough to cast shadows across the entire room. Her eyes, when they fixed on the approaching group, blazed with an inner fire that made the air itself seem to shimmer. She was, Sarah realized, absolutely terrifying. She was also, quite obviously, a mother who had spent 6 months believing her children were dead. "My children," the Empress said, and her voice, amplified by the ancient throne, rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. "My beautiful, precious children." The 3 cubs who had faced down General Vorthak with imperial authority, who had negotiated complex political situations with the skill of seasoned diplomats, suddenly became children again. They rushed forward with joyful cries, their formal postures forgotten in the overwhelming relief of reunion. Sarah watched as the most powerful being in the galaxy carefully enfolded her children in her wings, making soft crooning sounds that seemed to resonate in frequencies that made her own bones vibrate with sympathy. For a moment, the throne room held nothing but a mother reunited with her lost young. Then the Empress's gaze found Sarah. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah felt the weight of that ancient, terrible intelligence studying her with an intensity that made her want to hide. She forced herself to stand straight and meet those blazing eyes directly. "You," the Empress said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls ring like bells, "are the human who stole my children." "No, Mother," Draco said quickly, pulling away from the embrace. Sarah Mother saved our lives. She raised us when our own people had abandoned us. She is family now, Orion added, moving protectively toward Sarah. Through adoption rights and bonds of love. She taught us honor, Cassiopeia said, taking Sarah's hand in her clawed one. Real honor. Not just the appearance of it. The Empress studied this display with unreadable eyes. Did she? And what, precisely, did this human teach you about honor? Sarah found her voice, though it came out smaller than she would have liked. Your Majesty. They are faced-to-clead pawn. The way that Arsation, I taught them what my species believes, that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That leadership means service to others, not dominion over them, that the measure of a person's worth is not in what they can take, but in what they choose to give. Human philosophy, the Empress said dismissively. Your species has always been weak. No, Draco said firmly, and Sarah was startled by the steel in his young voice. Mother, you're wrong. The throne room fell absolutely silent. Even the Imperial guards stationed around the walls seemed to stop breathing. I am wrong? The Empress repeated, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Yes, Orion said, stepping up beside his brother. Humans aren't weak. Sarah Mother proves it every day. When we were hungry, she gave us her own food, Cassiopeia said. When we were cold, she shared her warmth. When we were afraid, she sang us songs from her homeworld until we could sleep. She could have left us to die. Draco continued. It would have been easier. Safer. She had no reason to save 3 enemy children. But she did it anyway. Because it was right. And then, Orion said, his voice growing stronger, when General Vorthak tortured her in front of us, she never told him who we were, even in pain. Even knowing that revealing our identity would stop her suffering. She stayed silent, because she thought it would protect us. The Empress's scales shifted to a pattern Sarah didn't recognize. Gold shot through with silver veins. Is this true? She asked quietly. Every word, Draco said. Sarah Mother taught us that the strongest people are those who choose kindness, even when it costs them everything. She taught us that real leadership means making yourself a shield for others, not a sword over them. These are not weaknesses, Cassiopeia added. These are the qualities that will help us rule wisely when our time comes. Sarah watched as the Empress's expression slowly changed. The terrible intensity in her eyes softened, replaced by something that might have been wonder. Show me, the Empress commanded suddenly. Your Majesty? Sarah asked. Show me this human strength. Prove to me that my children's faith is justified. Sarah looked around the vast throne room, at the Imperial guards, at the artwork celebrating conquest and domination, at the 3 cubs who were watching her with such trust. She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The crash, the dying eggs, the months of patient teaching and learning, the torture she had endured, rather than betray her children. Your Majesty, she said quietly, your children are the proof. Look at them. Really look at them. The Empress turned her attention to the 3 cubs, and Sarah could see her noticing things she had missed in the joy of reunion. They stand together, Sarah pointed out. Not in hierarchy, but in support. Draco may be the smallest, but his siblings don't dominate him. They include him. They've learned to lead by consensus, not by force. When General Vorthak threatened me, they didn't respond with violence, even though they could have. They used words. Negotiation. The promise of mercy balanced with the threat of justice. They turned an enemy into an ally. And most importantly, Sarah continued, they chose to protect me, even when it put them at risk. They could have saved themselves political trouble by disowning the human who raised them. Instead, they claimed me as family. The Empress was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had changed completely warmer, more thoughtful. General Vorthak, she called. And the general stepped forward with obvious reluctance. My children tell me you made an error in judgment. Yes, Your Majesty, he said stiffly. I accept full responsibility for my actions, and await your justice. And yet, the Empress continued, they also tell me you helped transport them home safely, that you provided medical care for their mother, that you chose cooperation over stubbornness when faced with your mistake. They were very persuasive, Your Majesty. I'm sure they were. There was something that might have been amusement in the Empress's voice. General, you will be reassigned to the diplomatic corps. It seems my children have learned skills that could benefit all of our military leaders. Sarah saw the relief flood through Vorthak's frame as he realized he would live. As for you, the Empress said, turning back to Sarah, you present me with a unique situation. You are clearly beloved by my children. They speak of you as family, and I can see that you love them in return. More than anything, Sarah said without hesitation. Then you will stay, the Empress declared. You will help me understand these human concepts my children have learned. You will teach our advisors about this strength through kindness that you have shown them. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm not a diplomat or a teacher. I'm just a xenobiologist who raised 3 princes and princesses to be better rulers than any academy could have prepared them to become, the Empress interrupted. Who showed them that true strength comes not from inspiring fear, but from inspiring loyalty? Who proved that love can cross species barriers and create bonds stronger than blood? The Empress rose from her throne, and for the first time, Sarah saw her smile. It transformed her entire face. You saved my children, she said simply. But more than that, you helped them become the leaders this empire needs for the future. A future where strength comes from unity, not conquest. Where our power comes from the allies we make, not the enemies we destroy. She looked around the throne room, at the guards, at the artwork, at the ancient symbols of imperial power. For 3 centuries, I have ruled through fear and strength. I built an empire that spans star systems and commands the respect of 1,000 worlds. But my children have shown me something I had forgotten, that the greatest empires are built on love, not fear, on protection, not domination. She turned back to Sarah, and there was genuine warmth in her blazing eyes. Sarah Chen, adoptive mother of the imperial heirs, teacher of wisdom and kindness, you have given me the greatest gift any mother could receive. You gave me back my children, and you gave them the tools they need to rule with both strength and compassion. Welcome to the family, the Empress said, and her voice, amplified by the throne of echoes, carried the words to every corner of the palace and beyond. In the months that followed, the changes rippled throughout the Dracorian Empire. The 3 cubs began their formal education in statecraft, but their human mother's lessons remained at the heart of their learning. General Vorthak proved surprisingly effective in the diplomatic corps, spreading word of the princes' and princesses' approach to leadership. The peace treaty with humanity was expanded into a full alliance. Trade routes opened, cultural exchanges began, and at the center of it all, 3 dragon cubs and their human mother showed the galaxy that family was stronger than species boundaries. Sarah often thought about that moment in the cave when Draco had asked General Vorthak to name his family. At the time, it had been a threat, a warning of the consequences of harming those under imperial protection. But it had become something more. It had become an invitation for enemies to become family, for fear to become love, for strength to become protection instead of domination. The human who had saved 3 dragon cubs had, in turn, helped save an empire from itself. And in doing so, she had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing kindness, even when it costs you everything, especially then,